Okay, hello everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Since in this week's parsha we have this first baomer, and obviously today is baomer. Um, so everything seems to be pointing to that. So hopefully we can try to um, give a sort of understanding, perhaps a beginning of an understanding in what is going on with the baomer. What is it, and what is it coming to do? And try to give an insight. So obviously we have the pasuk, the simple pasuk. It says you count Sheva Shabbos Times Tiena, and so we know that the count is from it's from right after Pesach, from after the first day of Pesach, um, uh, until Shavuos. So essentially, the Sephira of the baomer is a thing the Torah tells us to do, and it is meant as the connector, the bridge between Pesach and Shavuos, which is extremely obvious. What's less obvious is trying to understand precisely what exactly is the relationship between Pesach and Shavuos, and how does Sphira consolidate that, or what does it do to it, really? Chira just seems to be like a very strange thing. Okay, so you're counting 7 weeks. Okay, very nice. And what is the idea of that? What does that do? How does it create the bridge between the two holidays? The other way to really ask the question, and I think this is a question, but it's also clearly the beginning of an answer, which is that we know we have the famous Mishnah in Avos. The famous Mishnah in Avos says that, it says baomer over here. Baomer v'aluchos ma'aseh Elokim hima, and it says mirta v'Elokim hu charas aluchos atik charas al cheres. So Chazal say she'ein lecha ben chorin ela misha osik b'talmud Torah. You only have a ben chorin. The only free person is someone who is osik in Talmud Torah, in learning Torah. Now, she'ein lecha is an exclusive statement. In other words, Chazal is saying that there is no person, there is no ben chorin, ela misha osik b'talmud Torah. It's only someone who is osik b'talmud Torah. So that's talking about the luchos, and the luchos happens. Well, it's a whole different discussion, but for the sake of this discussion, we'll say that the luchos happens on Shavuos, and therefore, lechaira, Shavuos and Talmud Torah, the acceptance of Torah is where the Jewish people achieve freedom, because in the Chabin Chal Mishas B'Torah. Yet Shavuos is called Zman Matan Torasenu, and Pesach is called Zman Cherusenu. So that is a question. It's an incorrect thing, because if Chazal make a statement, she'ein lecha, they don't say that there's an additional level of cherus. They don't say that there's another thing. It's she'ein lecha. She'ein lecha means you don't have. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. There is no person who can be considered a ben chorin unless he's being Isaac B'Tar. Okay, so if that's the case, then how is Pesach Zman Cheruseinu? Shavuos should be Zman Cheruseinu, because we only got the charus, the cherus, which is from the luchos, the charus ala luchos, on Shavuos, and even then we didn't get them. But again, for now we'll say that we did. So why is Pesach called Zman Cheruseinu then? And then on what way on Pesach did they really become free? And then how is that being consolidated, or how is it being bought out or finished or something by Shavuos? What is the inner workings of that? And then we have the famous Gemara in Yevamos that speaks about the 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, and the Gemara says that Kulam le'meisu ela bein Pesach la Seres. Right? So it says because there are no kavod zelazah, and Tishana Kulam meisu mi Pesach v'adat Seres. Right? So and then Lag Baimer, simply speaking, is the Messiah that we have it's the Messiah that's the day where they stopped dying, was Lag Baimer. So that's why we have that celebration. So it's very difficult to understand what is really going on over here, especially because we know that these Rabbi Kiva was a Talmud. It was the Rebbe of these 24,000 Talmidim. His motto, his whole thing is so it's very hard to understand what the simple pshat over here is. Nakuda Aleph is that you're not chayiv misa mina shamayim for not being noyeg covered in someone. That's Nakuda Aleph. Nakuda Beis is what is talking the pshat that they didn't learn this from the Rebbe, and what meaning what is the idea of this fact that they were not covered, and what does that have to do with them as Talmidim? In other words, if you want to say stam, so as people they were not covered zelazeh, so they died. That's a very sad thing. Okay, I mean I hear, but that has nothing to do with the fact that they're Talmidei Rebbe Kiva. Talmidei Rebbe Kiva sounds like it has to do with the fact that there is Talmidim and they were not knowing covered zelazeh, and therefore they died. What does that have to do with it? I mean, in our minds, you're being, we have respect for someone, and you're not. That's a midas issue. So, are you respectful to the person, or are you not? What does it have to do with them as they are to meet in Rebbe Kiva? And then also, why is that something that we bother to mourn? Going forward. We have had times, unfortunately, in Judaism that a lot more than 24,000 people were killed in specific times. So we don't take blot out times out of the year to say, oh well, let's be sad now because many Jews died at this point in history. I mean, this is not how it works. I mean, there are many times, unfortunately, that Jewish people have been murdered in some highly more significant numbers than 24,000, and we don't stop listening to music, haircuts, etc. What is the idea of that? And then, is there a relationship between that and between Pesach and Atzeres? Or is it just that it happened during that time, so it happens to be that we're doing it because the event happened during this time? V'chayra, especially if we're going to be, being noyeg halachas out it always has to be the same with anything that Klal Yisrael does forever, for all the generations. It has to be that it's not pshat that something happened a long time ago and now we're still just sad about the Talmidei Rebbe Kiva, which just wouldn't make any sense, but it's pshat that there is something intrinsically about the idea of being Pesach Latzeres, which was violated by Sprinter Rebbe Kiva, and which we acknowledge, and therefore it is incumbent upon us to do things to be sensitive to that violation, which itself would therefore serve as an avoda, as a way of bringing us closer to the sensitivity of what the avoda of the baomer and of Ben Pesach Hatzaris actually is. That's a requirement in order for something to have lasted and to have become a minhag in Klal Yisrael for this long. And the question is, what is that? So I'll start off and try to say an answer. It's not a solidified answer yet, so I think that there's a lot of work to be done with it. But I'm going to say a few ideas that I had on the subject, and perhaps there can be value gained from them to the listeners. The basic understanding of what occurs in Yetzias Mitzrayim, and this is, we spoke about this in Haggadah, etc., is that we go from Avdus, which means being defined and having our senses of self given to other people, namely the masters, and it's returned to us. And in the return to us, we now have our own independent senses of identity. That sense of identity, a sense of identity that someone has to be tied to a goal or purpose. If I say that I have an identity, it's not meaningful. There is no identity if it's not tied to a goal or purpose. In other words, there has to be something. What am I about? What is my identity? And that identity was established with the Yetziah of Mitzrayim, and the identity of the Yid becomes someone who is in a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That transforms into the identity. That's the new identity based off which the Jewish people can achieve Chedus, which is why we understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Zacharti lach chesed ne'orayich. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says in Nevi'im that he remembers the chesed of the Jewish people in their young years, so to speak, when they just come out of Egypt. So the pasuk says that they went after the Rebbeinu Shalom in a midbar with a land that was not Zerua. And so what occurs essentially is that there's an identity shift from us being Avadim to the Egyptians to now us having a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is what we are about. That becomes what our goal is. And that is now the basis of our independent senses of self, which we can now decide and now operate based off of that new sense of identity. And you see this, the Gemara, the Psukim say, in Parshas Shemos, they say that there's a place called Pi Hachiros. And Chazal tell us that, so it's over here, so it says, Yeshua v'yachanu lifnei Pi Hachiros. It should be in Rashi. Oh, yes, here we go. So v'yachanu lifnei Hachiros, hu pisam. V'asher nikra Pi Hachiros, al shem shenasu sham b'nei chorin. So it says because Hashem Shanasu Sham B'nei Chorin, because now there the Jewish people became, this lashon of Ben Chorin. So this is where it happened. So now what's occurring over here? So what's happening is that Klal Yisrael are actually going back towards the Egyptians, and they're doing it based off a trust in Moshe Rabbeinu, who is the shliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore that proves that they're no longer subject to the Egyptians and therefore fear of them, but rather they have a new basis of establishment of identity, which is their freedom, and that sense of self allows them to make this bold move of going back towards the Egyptians, and that's what you see here in Rashi. Rashi says Vayasu Chen, they went back. Right? This is to say their praise, that they listened to the voice of Moshe. Right? They didn't say, oh, how are we going to get close to our enemies? We have to run away. So we only need the Divrei Ben Amram. So essentially, what that means is that is where there is an establishment of Cherus, of an independent sense of identity, of a sense of boldness, of an ability to risk, to do things do something that is seemingly counterintuitive and not secure, because you believe in something. There's something that you're going for. There's someone that you trust, through whom that sense of self and belief is coming through. And that is the place of establishment of the Cherus. Now, I believe we have an understanding that we know that it says that what the baomer does is it counts Sheva Shabbosos. Now we know that the word Shabbos means two things. It means Shabbos, the day Shabbos, and it means it means the entire week. And there's a reason why it means both things, because essentially, in the Torah perspective, all of the week is viewed as a lead up to Shabbos. That's why if you say the Shir Shayos, it says Yom Rishon B'Shabbos, Lishi B'Shabbos. The reason is because you want to reference the day to the Shabbos, because Shabbos is considered the Iker, and the rest of the days are considered to be leading up to it. And we have a multitude of Chazals and Gemaras all over the place, in which we understand that the what was that? So let's go with this. So now we know we have Sheva Shabbos, which means that really we're talking about essentially what we're talking about is a double Shabbos. In other words, a Shabbos of Shabbases. So 49 is a 7 of 7. So it's a Shabbos of Shabbases, and the day of Shavuos is literally means weeks. Right? So that's essentially what's happening. So the theory that I would like to posit is that Shavuos is to Pesach what Shabbos is to the week. And the definition, the idea of what Shabbos is to the week, and this is a interesting concept, is that we know that it says, and it's brought down in Midrashim, that all of the Sheshish Mei Bereshis, all 6 days of Bereshis, the world was the Lashon HaMedrash, it was roifes, it was shaky, it was going from one place to another, it was shaking, it wasn't settled, it wasn't solidified. Then Shabbos came, and Hashem created Menucha, and in the creation of Menucha, the world took form and settled and became permanent. And what the Midrash is showing us and is telling us is a beautiful insight into the Yesod of Shabbos and the Yesod of Menucha, is that Menucha is not the definition, is not a negative of doing something. It doesn't mean I'm not doing something. Rather, Menucha has a positive aspect. What is the positive aspect of Menucha? And this is the same concept as Nachas as well, because they're the same word. When someone says you should have Nachas, what does that mean? What it means is the following. What it means is that a person, throughout the entire week, is going forward. He's being oived, he's working, and he's developing, and he's growing, and he's accumulating whatever it is that he's doing. Whatever, it doesn't matter in which area of life he's growing. The point is, all week you grow, and you work. However, in order for a person to truly become the thing that he is working, there has to be a point in time in which he exists in a manner in which he has the ability to internalize and appreciate and recognize everything that he has achieved up to this point. Right? So this is true on many different levels, but on even the simplest level, a person, people think that siyumim on masechtas or the concept of appreciating accomplishments and seeing how far I become is just a nice thing, or it's not that it's a nice thing. Rather, the aside of the ability